Someone needs.
John Day.
Thank you.
Aaron Farbo.
White Ranowitz.
Amy Monahan.
David Morse,
Joseph Badaletta. Doug Porter.
online.
Tim Young.
Mark Blackmer.
Great, thank you, guys. Designation of delegates, we need two, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yes. So we'll see John and Wright this evening. Now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't have much to say other than thank everybody for being here. Thanks, Mark, for running last meeting. Sorry I couldn't be here. But I assume everything went well. We have any comments, citizens' comments on anything that we're not going to cover tonight's meeting? Yeah, I mean, if you.
It's just following up from prior meetings.
Just state your name, please.
Bullberry.
Okay.
On December 4th, we had a meeting about 8 Stonebridge Road. And there was supposed to be a follow-up regarding if that was grandfathered into some sort of bed and breakfast. There was follow-up that on the notes of subsequent meetings on January 22nd, I believe, requesting that again from someone in the committee. Still haven't seen anything on that, so just wanted to find out when there will be a resolution so that we can understand it. Second to that, there's a portion of that property that's being rented that wouldn't fall under any of that, so I'm asking that the commission review.
Okay. I think that John, did you investigate any of the
Yeah, and I did, and I reported back to the commission. I don't believe it was last meeting. I think it was probably the meeting before. They have no full bed and breakfast license. They are allowed to do an Airbnb similar to basically anybody in town that's currently allowed, but there is not a grandfathered full bed and breakfast, which is to say service of food and that sort of thing. I believe I already reported on that.
Okay,
David,
last meeting.
it's in the minutes from last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
They're number 3.
And as for a report of some additional activity that shouldn't happen, I would ask that a written report be made to my office.
Okay.
Letter submitted, but if I need to submit something else.
Yeah, if you think something else is going on, please. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, Doug.
Several of us went to the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies conference, and we have certificates that I forgot to give to you before you left. Mrs. Morris, you got there, you can get your credit. You must have gotten yours, Joseph, right? I don't know. Oh, no, you spelled with a 2 A, 3 A's.
Well, it spilled me.
You've probably
Wow.
seen it spelled other ways.
Yeah.
So, it was an interesting meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, here's Mark Blackmer. Give that to the chairman, so you can give that to Mark.
I have your certificate, Mark.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
And John, I think you keep track of those hours, don't you, or the office does?
Yeah, so I would need some indication, just a quick email from whoever attended.
Okay.
And regarding other training, I did go to the Zoom training, John, from your March 11th meeting.
Okay.
And so I did a couple hours on that. That was a Public Act 25-1.
Right.
So that's
So that's-
still available for the other members to.
Yeah,
Get
it
on.
is. It's linked on my company's website, taikiplans.com. So anyone can, the recording is there. So Joe, I'd ask you just to send me a quick email indicating that you participated so we can keep track.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
It was pretty good.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear it.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the minutes from the last meeting.
You've seen alternates?
Does somebody have a?
Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Second. Any discussion?
Sorry, who was the first?
Joseph,
Joseph, A.
Second.
Who's done there?
any discussion?
Is there a motion to accept?
Yes, John Day made the,
Okay.
made the
So we all-
motion, the second, Joseph made the first
Mhm.
motion, John Day seconded.
Yep.
And now we're having I was just asked if there's any discussion, or anybody had any additions or subtractions to the minutes? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. On to. We don't have a public hearing. New business is the proposed extension of a subdivision Mylar filing. John, can you update us on that?
So yes, so I just put it on the screen. Received an email last week from Paul Archer from Archer Surveying. The 2-lot subdivision on Meehan Road that was approved a couple of months ago. He was, for Stephen and Wendy Turner, just asking for a 90-day extension on filing of the Mylars. He's entitled to an initial 90 days and then 2 subsequent 90-day extensions. So he's looking for his first of 2 90-day extensions. So we just need a simple motion to grant the extension.
I make a motion to grant the extension.
Second. First Doug, second was John. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? So moved. Or any extensions, I'm sorry, but anyway, so moved, everybody voted aye. That brings us to the new plans we got, just this past week. The Flynn subdivision up on 169. Look at it, that's, does he have everything submitted there, John?
So yeah,
Like he had a lot of work done that, some done ahead of time that couldn't get passed because the state wouldn't allow him because we hadn't passed us yet.
well, yeah, so this is just a fairly simple lot split. You know, 2-lot subdivision creating 1 new lot on Route 169. I believe we've got Daniel Blanchette from J&D Site Design with us, who is the engineer and the surveyor of record, I believe. So you have the application file in front of you, Mr. Chair. This is just for receipt. I filled out I reviewed the subdivision application today, filled out the checklist. There's a copy of the checklist in the application file. Basically, everything's in place. We have the full application. We have the plan set. We have a fee. There's only a couple of things missing. I'll note them and I'll let Daniel jump in and comment. This is on Route 169, so we do need a letter of encroachment approval from DOT approving the location. They had an initial review, and I think it's basically set to go. There's a couple of tweaks that needs to be made to the site plan. We have not yet received final approval from the health district, NDDH, so we're waiting on that. There are no wetlands on site, so as the wetlands officer, I've indicated that the wetlands are fine. There's no need to proceed on that path. And then I think the only comment I had on the checklist requirements is that per state statute, a statement needs to be added regarding the developer's intent to make efforts to position the houses to maximize solar gain for energy efficiency. But I believe everything else is in place. There's no public improvements proposed. It's just basically 1 new lot, 1 new driveway. And I'll shut up and let Daniel speak to any further details.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Well, my name is Daniel Blanchett. For the record, I'm a licensed civil engineer and land surveyor. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant Daniel Flynn. Again, we're not seeking approval this evening, but I wanted to introduce everyone to a project, a small subdivision to create one new single-family home. The site's located on Route 69. It's on the east side of the road, just north of the intersection with Route 197. Again, I think it's a pretty simple project. My client has about 6 acres with one existing house, and he's proposing to cut off just a hair under 2 acres to build one new house. I believe we're meeting all the applicable zoning requirements. As John said, I did submit the plans to DOT for review and comment. I got a letter back dated February 4th that had a couple minor comments. They're very easy to address. I don't anticipate any issues with DOT. Again, we don't have health department approval. It has been submitted. Hopefully I'll have that for the next meeting in May. And just to touch base on the solar aspect, we have oriented the long side of the house to face due south. So in terms of passive solar or potential solar panels, I think the location is pretty ideal. Otherwise, the driveway is pretty flat. The septic system's pretty typical. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, we're not seeking approval this evening, but if anyone has any concerns or questions, I'd be happy to get into that.
I do. Can I stand up?
Yes, sure can, Joe.
My concern with these long driveways is the fact that you're gonna get erosion along the driveway, even though it's only a 3% slope. So what I would recommend with a driveway like this is to install a culvert right in this area, about halfway down, and have it go down into this swale area.
I apologize. I can't see the area you're pointing to. Maybe,
All right.
John,
Well,
could you maybe show on the screen?
It's on the dog leg, halfway up the
Right in
driveway.
here.
Okay, right
yeah.
at the curve. I got you. Yep.
With the curve on the dog leg, you're going to get water that's gonna run along the side of this driveway. It needs to come out and head out to the east, rather than continuing down the driveway and onto the state road. So one of the things that this commission doesn't look at a lot of times is they think just because it goes through the wetland commission, we don't have to worry about other erosion. Well, we do. So just because there's no wetlands here doesn't mean that you're not gonna have erosion due to water coming along here, some kind of a waterway, some kind of a culvert to transmit some of that water over to an area where it's not gonna come down onto Route 169. So that's my recommendation. And I'm a licensed engineer also.
Well, thank you for that comment, sir. I'd be happy to evaluate that before the next meeting, and possibly revise my plan. So thank you.
Yeah. Daniel, is there anything you want to, so I put up the topography detail. Is there anything you want to note about the slope here?
Yeah, just so again, we're proposing a gravel driveway. The max slope is 9%, which is pretty close to the house. The driveway is almost perfectly flat for the first 100 feet or so. So I will mention that, but again, I'd be happy to look at installing a culvert.
So, Mr. Chair, obviously if there are other comments, that's fine. At this point, I would recommend formally receiving the application and tabling decision until the next meeting.
Okay. Oh, wait, we had one.
Just a quick question. Is there a report from the Inland Wetlands Commission on that?
John said that there's no wetlands on the property.
There's no wetlands on site, so I indicating as the wetlands agent that it is sufficient to proceed.
Is that documented or just verbal? Just something for the record?
That's for yes. I'll state it for the record, but I also put a note on the checklist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did put it on here that there was no wetlands on the property.
Well, I know. It's just something nice to get the file.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Chris.
This is Doug Porter. Daniel, can you tell us how much, or for the next meeting, tell us how much of the site is going to be disturbed with the construction of the driveway and the house and the septic?
Absolutely. I can definitely provide that at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
So do we have a motion to accept these plans?
So move.
I thought it was to table it.
And John seconded.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Well, we're accepting this for what this is May, the May meeting, is that
For the next,
the next regular meeting?
yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Oh,
No, go ahead. Make your vote. I just have a note after.
okay.
21st, May 21st.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? So moved.
So if I might, Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just a quick follow-up on Doug Porter's request, and maybe a question for Daniel Blanchette also. It's a subdivision, it's a division of land. Any proposed development is hypothetical. How can you lock down an area of disturbance?
Are you asking me that question or Daniel?
Well, I'm starting with you, Doug, but
Okay. All I'm looking for is, and part of it is to talk with Joseph's concern, erosion and sediment control standards, plan requirements start being applicable once you have a certain square footage of area that's going to be disturbed. I actually don't think this project is going to disturb the area that's going to require an erosion and sediment control plan.
okay.
So I don't disagree with Joseph's concern about it, but our regulations, I'm not sure we have it within our regulations to ask for anything different. It's not a wetlands issue. It's under the area being just required for erosion and sediment control plan. So, and I don't think there's anything in our regulations that say that we have the right to require additional drainage work.
So you're saying you wouldn't need silt fence or anything? Is that what you're saying, Doug? You don't need any grass put in immediately after disturbance of the area?
Well, that's different. That's the
Need erosion and
Excuse me.
sediment control.
Okay, no, I just wanted, John,
yeah.
You-
No, I mean there will be, because this is a subdivision. An erosion and sedimentation bond would be required if any lawn area is not established before the certificate of occupancy, but that doesn't necessarily factor into the initial area of disturbance. That is more about basically post-construction, pre-establishment of the lawn. But that's a separate bond.
Yeah, you actually have a bond for erosion and sediment control.
Right, but that's usually post-construction if they're looking for a CO before the lawn is established. We don't require a bond if the lawn is all set before they need the CO. But
Yeah, I know.
anyway, yeah.
A 1/2 acre disturbance thing, but that's more or less for stormwater management plan, not for erosion and sediment control plan.
So I guess we'd look to, have Mr. Blanchette review both the regulations and his design and see if there's anything further that needs to be considered.
Right.
Absolutely. As John said, this is kind of a conceptual plan. The final site plan could be a little different, but going back to the other concern, I suspect the limit of disturbance that we discussed for the subdivision will be substantially similar to the final plans for construction. And so I have no objection trying to estimate the area of disturbance. And I'll try to bring that before the commission next month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Any more questions on this before we move on? Under new business C, English Neighborhood Road, Gabriel D'Annunzio subdivision.
So, yeah, you don't have anything in front of you because as I was reviewing this, I discovered that it's not actually a subdivision application. So there was some subdivision plans that were done by CHA 4 years ago. And Mr. D'Annunzio wanted to change his house location on one of the subdivision lots and submitted a full set of subdivision drawings and filled out a subdivision application, basically telling CHA that he would handle this application stuff himself. Applied basically for a subdivision application. It wasn't clear what he was doing. He didn't pay a fee, didn't submit a wetlands permit. And when I was reviewing it today, I called CHA and said, what's going on with this? And he basically, CHA representative kind of said, we're not sure, but it's not a subdivision yet. So it is basically an administrative permit for a house location that is filled out on the wrong form and is not paid. So with apologies, this is not an application for you. At some point, it will become an application for me, but this was submitted in error.
Okay.
So we can move on.
Well, that one's easy.
Yeah.
All right, go. That brings us to old business, discussion of the draft of the multifamily zoning regulations.
So I printed up, and I don't know if people saw it on the center table there where the owl camera is. There's a copy of notes that were provided following last meeting from Doug Porter. After last meeting, I also received a number of multifamily or small multifamily images from John Day, and would be happy to share some of those to talk through some more. But at this point, I would be, I think, a little bit more interested in getting a sense of the commission's impression on Doug's comments, frankly, because I think we're still looking for sort of final direction on where these regulations are going to go. So that's, I guess, sort of where we are. And with again, I feel like I still need a little bit more direction from this commission. And I'll acknowledge I didn't change much at all on the proposed regs, largely because I was finishing writing the plan of conservation and development draft this past month. So I focused on that and kind of set aside the multifamily for a little bit more discussion before I did any editing. So I'm happy to share the screen and go to some of the substance of Doug's comments from the last meeting, if that's useful.
The commission knows none of those comments are new. But when we were having the discussion last meeting, John asked for, the comments. I said, you know what, I have them written out. I'll send them to him so you can see. And they're just conceptual things. But I just figured it's a lot easier for people to see it in writing than it is to just hear me talk.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
So, if you're looking at the second page, or I think I printed it backside, so it's the top of the backside, a couple of the revisions. Doug had suggested initially a separate definition of duplex, which was in there, and I guess, Doug, I don't know, you don't think it was appropriate to have essentially duplex C2 family. You wanted a separate definition?
I struggle with your definition, that's all.
Well, currently the definition that I proposed was duplex C dwelling two family. Two family is listed as a single building containing two independent residential units, but not including an accessory apartment. That was what you had a problem with?
Yeah, I'm trying to create that concept that we can have two buildings. you still limit a duplex to be a single building. And I'd like people to have the design option of having two small separate buildings than to have it always be one building
Okay.
with two units.
Okay,
Just trying
so
to create some diversity in the streetscape too, so that we can have some flexibility.
okay, well, so that leads to a separate question, which if people can see on the screen, we're in the D section of the definitions, where we have middle housing dwelling, which is here admittedly I call it a single structure, but structure used or designed as a home or residence for 2, 3, or 4 families living independently of each other. That's where I had initially intended, because we still haven't kind of solidly come down on the, middle housing being separate structures or a single structure. I think if we go for separate structures, I would put what you're describing, Doug, as 2 independent units freestanding as middle housing rather than duplex. I think of a duplex as a single structure, or a 2-family dwelling. I would propose to change this in middle housing dwelling to describe 1 or more buildings, if that makes sense. If that creates the definitional room you're looking for.
I think that works. I'm not sure the rest of the commission agrees, but that was my concern, was I want to
Right.
give the chief that we don't have 4plexes having to be a long building. It could be 2 buildings of duplexes, or 3 units in one. The site asks for that. So that I'm trying to give some flexibility.
Okay, so if we may, well, I'm addressing you directly because you're the one that gave me comments in writing. But that would take care, if we called it 1 or more structures, that would answer your question there.
So it seems like we should have like a square foot limit on these multiple buildings, or even the on the size of the buildings, if they're gonna put 4 smaller buildings or 2 duplexes in, which just seems like we should have a size limit, so we don't have, otherwise could have 2 full-size houses on a standard lot, which is not what we're looking for. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So I just think that we should look at a size limit on these, so that we're trying to make maybe not affordable, but attainable housing. We want to make sure that what people will build come in at maybe a lower cost level. I mean, that was our goal, was to make it more affordable to live in Woodstock. That's what we've been hearing from constituents, that we want. They can't afford to live in town. So
like 1,000 square feet, 1,200.
Yeah, something so that it's. I mean, that we can discuss that and figure out what we want, but I think we want to make sure that we don't create something a monster that we can't control or don't want. I mean, that's kind of what I thought was our goal, was to create attainable. We can't mandate affordable housing. We don't have the infrastructure or the money, but so I think that's why we should have a limit on size. Joe, you got a question?
This middle housing still has to go on a 2.5 acre lot, right? Or not?
Yes.
Yeah, that was like a
It's
minimum
still a
size.
2.5 acre lot,
Or it can be bigger, but
or bigger.
yeah.
But you couldn't do middle housing on an existing 1 acre lot.
That's kind of.
Is that correct, John?
I mean,
I think that's correct.
Well,
yeah.
I disagree.
Septic well.
The way the regulations are proposed right now, you can put middle housing on an undersized lot.
Really?
Yes. I think
hold on,
that's.
let me just double check, because I don't want to answer this incorrectly.
Well, to a certain extent, John, that's why I sent these to you, because under my details, I think we should just make sure it's clear.
Yeah,
Allow 2 units
Right,
on.
no, in my opinion, it is clear, I just had to find the right page.
The lot.
So this is the way the regulations are proposed right now. In the community district, a middle housing dwelling shall be allowed on a lot on lots with a minimum 2.5 acres of land and 1 acre of contiguous buildable land. So the answer to Joe Palulik's question is yes.
Okay, good,
But it's a minimum of 2.5 acres.
good.
Yeah, but, and again, John, that's why I sent you these so you could look at them without being in this discussion. I think your definition of a duplex all creates a problem in there that you could actually have duplexes on a 1 acre lot. But, and that's getting down to nitty and gritty, and you really need a
Yeah.
regulation guy to make sure. When
Well,
I read it, as
that
I
is.
take the aggressive. I'll get more aggressive if I need to with it and tell you exactly where I think it is. But as an aggressive developer, I think you have a loophole in there that you can build more units on a undersized lot.
Doug, how so?
I wasn't prepared to defend this tonight. Sent it to John so he could look at it.
Yeah.
Well, when you send it to me, you send it to everybody, Doug. That's freedom of information.
Close that loophole if there is one.
And we can just direct John to say, make sure that we have this covered.
Right, right.
So
'Cause I-
the way that the regulation is written, again, this is proposed, a 2-family dwelling, which is 2 residential units within 1 structure, would be permitted on conforming and legally pre-existing non-conforming lots with a minimum acre of 1. So you could do 2, if you had an acre that was buildable, you could do 2 units. If you had 2.5 acres, you could do up to 4. And I hope that's clear there, but we can talk about
Well,
that.
and I just want to make sure everyone knows here that that's what it says. And my
Seems
point
like
to John is, I don't want to allow 2 units on a 1 acre lot.
Right.
Unless everybody here agrees to that, I just want to make sure you see that implication.
I agree with you, Doug.
But we already allow, if I might, Doug, we already allow a single family and an accessory on an acre,
That's,
Yeah, we understand the exception.
which is to say 2 dwellings, same as a duplex, 2 dwellings on an acre, already allowed.
I think a duplex is different than a single family residence with an accessory dwelling. I mean, they still have 2 families, but to me, it's a different concept,
use like a regular house and then a smaller
right?
one, and we're talking 2 full-size houses.
But this says within one structure, a 2-family dwelling. 2 residential units within 1 structure, so that's not saying 2 separate.
But it's a size for 2 full families.
Correct, so there's one on Payne District, that's like, it's a good example of a duplex. And it looks like just an extended raised ranch and it
Yeah.
fits on, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I know,
but
but
it's
what
not.
we're saying is that we don't,
buildings.
having a. I think that you can have like, there's more, you're having more bedrooms and more space, you could have 2, 3. Usually when you have a house with a accessory structure, usually it's like a 1-bedroom, maybe a 2-bedroom addition. And you could have 4 or 5 in your original house. So it's a smaller, it's less, less pressure. I don't know how to say that,
I understand what you're saying, but unless we specify like bedroom count as a developer comes in. Like, we don't have that kind of control, correct? Like, if we have a duplex or even accessory dwelling. It doesn't say how many bedrooms that's gonna be for a total count on the lot, so we all have our ideas, but there's not a uniform way to predict that unless we say
Well, we
the
can limit-
bedroom
we
count.
can limit square footage on a duplex.
Yeah, you can limit square footage on whatever you want.
On a duplex, and that would,
You currently don't limit square footage on single family residences. Someone could have a 16,000 square foot house.
yeah, but maybe on a duplex, we could limit the square footage.
I'm just trying, like,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing, I'm just
No,
saying, we all
no,
have our
I-
different ideas of what we're looking at, and unless we're clear about the specifics, then we're not gonna come to a conclusion.
So what's the big issue with a duplex on a 1 acre lot?
I'm not saying I have an issue. I just want the commission to know that that's what we're allowing.
Okay.
And it's on existing lots. And there's a lot of existing lots. I'm all for this middle housing and providing diversity in housing in the town. I'm just worried about how quickly it's gonna happen. And I expect you're going to hear from the public during a public hearing that we want to maintain the rural characteristics of Woodstock. And now we're gonna have all of these potential new homes built on 1 acre lots. And we're going from 2.5 acres now for a single family, and now we're allowing 2 units on 1 acre.
But
That's a big change.
Which you already allow 2 units on an acre, just to be clear, Doug. You already allow 2 units on an acre.
With an accessory apartment, yes.
It's a
but is
unit.
it conforming lot? The 1 acre is
Yeah.
a non-conforming.
Correct.
Okay, so
It could be, I'm sorry, it could be conforming as part of a subdivision, because subdivision lots can be as little as 3/4 of an acre.
And I've developed a few of those, so, I clearly know there are a lot of 1 acre lots. And I basically say, and I have developed those sites, not to allow the additional units on those subdivisions the cluster subdivisions that the town approved. Because I worry about them. I worry that, to a certain extent, the people bought this project, they bought in that neighborhood thinking there'd be 12 houses, and now there could be 24. That's a big change.
So is there a way to mitigate that for the non-conforming 1 acre lots? Just,
That's what we
limit
have
the
John
size.
for, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure it's not just my opinion. Is that an issue that all
So-
every people have?
If we develop a subdivision, like you've created a subdivision, a layout, whether it's cluster or whatever. Can those be excluded from the middle housing and just have it be independent lots? Would that
I think so.
alleviate some of our concerns, right? Because if a subdivision is already maximizing or it's a set plan for your development. So you don't wanna give a whole bunch of leeway and for them to do other things within that. So maybe like any of those development subdivisions or cluster developments are not applicable to the multi-housing. It's just those standalone lots. And then you look at a standalone 1 acre, what are we allowing on that? And a standalone 2.5 acre or more, what are we allowing on that?
I'm
So that would
suggesting,
be the way to do that would be to, I think, probably set a date based on when the cluster subdivision regulations were put in place, which is approximately 2005, 2006. And so lots of less than, whatever the number is, 2.5 acres, if you wanted to do that, that were created by subdivision post 2006, I guess major any subdivision, post 2006 are only eligible if they have more than 2 acres or 2.5 acres. We could add that detail.
I think there's definitely ways for us to figure it out. We just have to be clear about what we're trying to figure out and all on the same page.
my whole thoughts are, let's take small steps. See what happens, and then if we find everything's working, then we can say, all right, we can expand it and see what happens.
So maybe we should just start with the duplex side of it. And go there and then see how it works and work on and then keep working on. The next step would be, like 3 or 4 unit apartments.
I'm just suggesting that we take our time. I
No,
think we
that's-
need to make changes sooner versus later. But just give us an opportunity to make sure we haven't missed something.
Yeah, no,
see what the interest is
Yeah.
from developers and landowners.
So just for my edification, is the concern about middle housing related to the number of people who will be living there? The number of the number of living dwellings in the abstract? Or is it the architecture that's gonna be maybe bigger? So right now you can build any size dwelling you want if you have a single family detached house. And so what would be the difference if you build something that would allow for 2 families or 3 families? Is it the cars? Is it the number of people? I mean, I guess what is it that's gonna change the character of the town about this? it's disconcerting to everybody.
I,
I just, I'm just
yeah, I
trying to
don't think
understand.
that a duplex is gonna change a whole lot, but you start getting bigger, a 3 or a 4 unit building, and that can change how it looks, certainly.
Is it the cars? I mean, because you drive around town. And I have to say that there are a lot of really pretty nasty looking single family detached houses in town. Which I don't think sort of fit with the character of Woodstock. So. In fact, I would say in general, the multifamily houses tend to. Sort of be more careful architecturally than the single family ones. And that's just kind of my sense. I went by the one across from Heritage Landing, and I have to say, I don't think that was that bad. It doesn't stick out like some of the other houses.
We gotta drive by that together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did on the way to the.
No, I did that specifically because you guys pointed that out. And I can see where the cars are an issue. So couldn't we just say the cars have to go in back or on the side, or make it so that they're not awful looking?
I think it's extremely difficult to regulate aesthetics. Because you're, just like the two of us, we both drove by those.
Yeah.
And we have two different views. And I think we're both reasonable people.
I'm not saying it's the Taj Mahal. I'm not saying
No,
it's
it isn't.
beautiful. Like, I don't think it's horrible. I mean, there's a lot of really nasty looking single family detached houses.
So I keep coming back, those people have a house.
Yep.
That they can live in. We have to remember that. Most of us are fortunate that we can afford to have a nice house and keep it up and things like that. There's lots of people that are just thrilled that they have a place to live.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that you could have more people living with nice houses that actually fit in with the character of the town, if we do it right. And
So I guess, yeah, I think, I'm sorry, John, to build off that question, and I think that's a pertinent question because again, and I think Doug, you're rightly noting that it's very difficult to regulate aesthetics. And so to John Day's point, like what is the qualitative or quantitative difference between what we currently allow, which is a single family and an accessory apartment, and allowing a duplex on the same size lot? Is it traffic? Is it appearance? Is it what? What is the concern? And so I'm encouraging us to split hairs on the difference between a duplex and a single family with an accessory apartment.
Not really a whole lot of difference. Maybe the potential for more cars at a duplex because you have 2 full families.
I think it's a level of perception and what we're accustomed to. Which, if you drive by a lot of the places that are 4-unit buildings in town that have been here for a long time, kind of used to them.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge now is trying to envision those similar kind of buildings in a lot more places around town. And what the impact is on trying to preserve the rural character and where those larger multifamily residents would go in town. We just don't know, or at least I don't know. And I think that's part of, certainly part of my concern is trying to understand where, if there's a burgeoning demand for duplexes or middle housing, where will they go? So I'm certainly in line with trying to take small steps. And if we can do things with duplexes and see what the demand is, then we take the next step and do the middle housing. So at least that's my opinion. We're used to seeing what's been here. Just concerned about what may happen.
Yeah, I mean, as we all are.
Yeah.
Yes, Doug.
John, just so you know, I treat accessory dwellings as another unit. I consider a house with an accessory dwelling as a duplex, as a 2-unit facility. And I think, as David brought up, the idea of limiting the size of those units when they become duplex, I think that's a good start. Or at least a way to not get all of a sudden have 3,000 square foot units right next to each other. But still give people the opportunity to have some diversity.
Okay.
I don't know, John, you have to tell us, can you just eliminate accessory units and just call them a second unit? Or is that state statute that they want to have that accessory unit?
It's a good question. I think it's at this point, it's basically up to the town, because I think a duplex, the state was setting up basically, I think, a floor when they required ADUs, right? And if you were to accept the state language as proposed, for municipalities that did not opt out or write their own regulations, I believe it was 1,000 square foot cap that the state had basically proposed. And municipalities are free and are still free to exceed that. I think you can't go below that because that's sort of the state floor. But as long as the town is allowing basically a second dwelling unit on an otherwise single family lot, that allows at least what the state was mandating under Public Act 2129. I think you're free to do what you want. So I think, if we called duplexes and ADUs essentially the same thing and allowed them with, probably a floor not to go below, sort of those state standards, I think you're probably free to do what you want.
Do we have 3 separate parameters that we're dealing with? Do we have like up to an acre, 1 parameter, right? Existing lots that are whatever, that are small, up to an acre. And then you have from like 1 acre to 2.5 acres, and then you have 2.5 and over.
Well,
is that a true statement that there's
everything that you're describing other than the 1 acre is in the hypothetical? That's in the proposed regulation, right? Because right now the only regulation on the books is if you want to build a single family residence, you can build it on any lot of record as long as you can fit a septic system in there, basically. There's lots of grandfather lots, Bungie, whatever. All these are tiny lots. You can put a house on it as long as you can get your setbacks and septic system. That's the baseline, single family.
up to the acre.
The next baseline is for if you want an accessory apartment with your single family residence. To do
Correct.
that, you need an acre. So the people on Bungie that are building that do an accessory apartment. But if you've got an acre, you can do an accessory apartment. That's the only parameter we've got right now. Everything else that we're being proposed is for discussion.
Okay, but they are kind of 3 different chunks, correct? Or like up to an acre established. So can we look at housing up to that? So leave it up to an acre, it's only a single family like we have. I don't think, you know what I mean? That should change. And then from 1 acre to 2.5 acres, you can do a single family with ADU or duplex. And then over 2.5 acres, go into something larger.
Yeah, middle housing up to 4.
Right.
Can Amy, you
that's-
basically just restated what I proposed.
Okay, I'm just clarifying to make sure that is what is there, because I like that.
That's proposed.
Right.
And that's what John.
I just wanted to make sure that I was correct in understanding that we have those 3.
Right. So that's, and again, to restate it again, up to an acre, you can only have a single family residence. Acre to 2.5 acres under my proposal would be you get 2 units. That could be a duplex, that could be a single plus an ADU. If you have more than 2.5 acres with a full acre of buildable contiguous, then you could do middle housing up to 4 units and probably multiple buildings, but that's not locked down yet.
So if we were to limit a duplex to a certain size, what would we limit it to?
I don't know, well, I mean. 1,200, I mean, that's just a number, 1,200 a unit, so you have 2,400 square feet total.
Oh, it's not very big though.
It's like a basic range house is like a 1,200 square foot house.
It would be affordable, probably.
So we're
So,
looking, no, it's not very big. But we're also.
so that would be, it would probably be a single building. And this is where, you know, we definitions matter, because if you're doing a single family plus an ADU, which can be attached, you could have a 5,000 square foot principal house and a 1,000 square foot ADU for a total of 6, but internally it just happens to be 5 and 1. If you did a duplex, which, you know, is a single building, we don't have square footage caps. What's the difference between a single family that's 5 and an ADU that's 1 and a duplex that happens to be 3 and 3?
Yeah, well, I think we're trying to somehow keep the cost down so that people can afford it. So I mean, that's why. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I don't know. That's the dilemma. That's why we're having these discussions. We're trying to keep things more affordable. But, you know, on the option, if somebody has a lot, they can build a duplex that's, say, 2,400 to 3,000 square feet with 2 units in it, or a 5,000 square foot home and a $1,000 ADU. The builder's gonna make more money on the bigger one, I believe. But if somebody wants to buy a lot and build their own duplex, because they're younger homeowner trying to get established, they could come in and they could build the duplex, live in half, rent the other half. I mean, that's what we're trying to get here, is where people can come in and maybe build a duplex instead of a regular house, a single family house, and live in one half and rent the other half, and have a unit that's big enough to actually charge a lot of, you know, a decent amount of rent for, rather than just a little tiny ADU type building. I think that's kind of the image I have in my mind, that we want to create the ability for somebody to come in and say, hey, I can build this house really small and be cramped and not comfortable, or I can build a little bigger and make my side bigger and then rent the other half, so that, you know, you're living in a house, you're getting equity, and then you're providing a house for another family that maybe doesn't have the equity to build a house, or, you know, that's kind of the goal that I would like, that I think that's my idea of what I'm trying to create. Or we're
So
trying to
what if
create.
you limit the total square footage for the entire duplex? Not just each unit. That way, if somebody wants to build a 2,000 square foot duplex on one side and 1,000 on the other, and rent 1,000 out, they can do it.
Yeah.
Because nobody's gonna come in and build 1,200 square foot on one side, 1,200 on the other side, live it and rent it, most likely. At least if we cap it for the entire duplex, it gives more flexibility for building one that's larger and having a smaller one to rent out.
Well, I'm not sure why the 1,200 on each side is considered not reasonable. Just as a comparison, Cornfield Point, they had 10 units at 778 square feet. And 24 units at 1,100 square. So obviously there's the interest in
Smaller spaces.
use for smaller spaces. So I'm just saying that 1,200 square feet for each side is not.
And that's just a number we just tossed out,
Sure.
so it's not.
And that would be a cap, not a floor. So
Right.
someone could still build a 700, 800 square foot unit. It would just be, you couldn't exceed.
1,200 might be okay if you have a full cellar.
Well, yeah, I mean, most houses around here have full cellar.
Most do, but I mean, if you don't have a cellar with 1,200 square foot, it's pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, is anybody building houses in the Northeast without a?
Did you
Full cellar.
build all of your buildings have cellars?
The vast majority of them did. When I was really looking at budget, I tried to do slab on slab construction. But you do run into problems where you put the utilities. It's less of an issue now where you have heat pumps So you don't have a furnace.
Yeah, okay,
That is helpful.
Gotcha.
Eric, my concern again is to try to be a little bit more restrictive and then let it go as it happens. I think there's probably a larger market for people to come in and build 2,000 square foot duplexes than there is to build 1,250 square foot duplexes.
So if we limit, let's say we limit to 1,200, do you think there would be development? Is it
Yes.
worthwhile? Like if you bought a, let's say a 2.5 acre lot, is it more worth your developer? If you put your developer hat on, is it more economical for you? And would you make more money putting a single family house on that or building a duplex? A small duplex, let's say.
If that was the option, if I would go and build the 3,000 square foot single family and the 1,000 square foot, that would be when I go. So I'd be worried about, that's why I think the 1,250 is maybe where you constrain it a little bit. It gets you that affordable housing that we're looking for. And I think that would help a lot of younger people. The trouble that I see is that most younger people want their parents' house or their grandparents' house to start with. And I've had this discussion, here. I lived in a lot of smaller houses and I lived in some tight apartments. And then I saved money and I was able to do something different. People tend to be, you want it right away. And I still think that's okay, but let's give them the option of seeing that maybe 1,250 square foot for a young couple, 1,250 feet's a lot of square footage.
John, can you pull up on GIS, 189 Payne District Road and put it up on the screen?
Payne District.
Yes, give me just a second.
Oh, Bruce's, John Tremblay's house. Yeah.
Bruce Hanson built that.
That's not being disrespectful.
Oh, that's Woodstock Road.
No,
So-
on Bruce, on that, across from Selesky's.
Across from Celestine's.
I think that's where you are.
Right
Maybe I'm
before the
wrong.
transfer station.
We'll see where it is on the map.
It's closer to
All right.
Salisky's.
Okay, I'm sorry, Amy, what was the address again?
189 Payne District.
All right.
You know, what I'm missing are my 3 screens that I have. Because vision is always up on one screen. When people are telling me something, I'm pulling up their house card to see what it is.
So this is a duplex, but in this duplex, there's full living areas upstairs, and then there's like almost in-law apartments downstairs. You could comfortably put 4 like small family, like, you know what I mean? And it's 1,700 feet, and it's not, I mean, it's just an example, like size wise, we're talking about it. I think it's
Yeah, you gotta help us. Where's the transfer station?
back down this way. So this is,
Where's
Here, let me-
Mrs. Celeste? Yeah,
So this is just south of Hibbert?
House that Bruce Hanson built. Years.
well, you know, you don't notice it because it's got trees in the front. It sits up.
but even like if it's not that obnoxious, if you can see it, you know what I mean?
Well,
And
so
like
this
size
is-
wise. The person that
There's a
I,
picture of it in the corner here.
years ago,
It's gotta be
and he bought it and he did, so like they bought it and they're like, oh, great. They wouldn't have been able to afford it without renting out, so it gave a homeowner a property, you know what I mean?
And I think that's what we're trying to create.
We're not. I mean, what I hope we're trying to create is a place where homeowner comes in, you know, a person comes in and builds a house, not a developer developing a whole chunk. We want to give people the opportunity to buy a lot and put a house on that can help get paid for, and then, you know, but they grow out of it, they sell it, it's another opportunity for another person to come in and, hey, I can buy this house because I can rent half of it.
Right, and that's a 1.6 acre lot with the living area is 1,704 square feet. Just so everybody
It says
understands
the
the size.
basement's finished though.
It is, yeah,
So it's 3,900 square feet then, isn't it?
probably.
Oh, do you want, I'm sorry, you want what the property card says with
Yeah,
the
the
square
first
footage?
floor is 1,704, so it is, and the finished basement, so it's 29, you're right, it's a 2,900 square foot.
So.
Cause the first floor,
1450.
Yeah, so
right,
the gross
like
area is
20.
38, but yeah.
I
Well,
just wanna make sure a cap we put on isn't gonna deter people from building. That's my only concern.
Well, that's less than 3,000 square feet, and like I said, I've been in there, there's plenty of room. Like, there was 2 bedrooms upstairs, I think there were 2 bedrooms in one of the finished basements, so it was like a 4-bedroom unit on one side with 2 full kitchens, it was crazy. And 3,000 square feet. Thank you, John.
Any sense of what the setback is on that from Payne District Road?
Yeah, I can measure it for you.
It's kind of,
It's kind of up a hill. and-
yeah, it's up a hill.
It's a ways.
It is a ways.
Yeah,
I'd say it's 150 feet.
you can hardly see the house from the road.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the
This-
advantages.
Yeah, it's 175 or so off the road itself.
So it becomes less visible to traffic.
I just like the example because it gives you a lot size and a house size, and we can all be on the same page when we're discussing it.
How big's that lot, Amy?
1.6 acres.
All right.
And lots of extra room on the site.
Yeah. Do you still have the vision card there, John? What is the length?
I closed it, but yeah, I can open it.
72 by 22.
I can tell you, I built a lot of houses that are 2,500 to 3,000 feet that are only on a 56-foot frame.
Right.
So that's a good size. And now you have 2 units.
It actually looks like it could be like a fourplex if there's like these doors to the lower level.
Yeah, if the zoning officer isn't paying attention, it'll be a fourplex before long.
Maybe if he is paying attention.
I always love to go into a house where people say, oh, we don't have a planner for this. The health department doesn't know about it. I said, well, I know about it, so.
So far in our discussions, are we generally thinking of an undeveloped lot? 1 acre, 2 acre, or somebody who has a single family residence on a 3-acre lot? And they want to put a duplex on it? But I'm just trying to get a sense of what we're envisioning mentally of an open lot and a duplex goes on it. Or, like I said, a bigger lot with a single family and the owner says, so I want extra income over.
I think it all depends on the lot. I mean, if you have,
Well, that'd be just like if you wanted to put another house on your lot, is that allowed? This would be the question for John. So if somebody has a house and a lot and it's.
Well, I'm just
4
picturing
acres, so I mean,
the-
you're saying
the
you
vision
want,
of it.
somebody has a house
Yeah.
already, you want to add another house?
Yeah, I'm just trying to set a mental picture of what where duplexes could go in town. And most of the time I'm thinking, all right, there's a 1 acre piece of undeveloped land. What if somebody decides we'll put a duplex there? But are there other cases of?
I think that's the case, but I think the real pressure you're gonna see is someone buying an existing house and putting another unit on that existing house. And that's gonna be more of a development.
So to make that single family a duplex? The single family residence,
With 2
to turn
units.
it with 2 units, right, okay.
So adding off the existing structure.
Yes or no? I'm suggesting that we don't necessarily have it, so it has to be added on. And you
So it
know,
could be a separate structure.
we have a subdivision that's in front of us right now, or just presented tonight, which is exactly what I expect to see more of coming in the future, which is not a problem. It's an 8-point-something acre site, and they're breaking it in 2, which is great. But I think you're gonna see more, that people are gonna find a 1.5 acre, 1 3/4 acre lot with a house that's in reasonable shape. And then they're gonna either add on to it and put a second unit, or if I continue, hopefully to suggest that we allow a second unit, you're gonna see that built.
A second separate building on the lot.
It's either that,
Okay.
and if you don't allow it, they're just gonna add on to it.
So if we limited the square footage, it would potentially take care of somebody building a giant second house as their duplex on the property.
They just showed us though, you can. build a bigger unit and still look okay. I think you start, it takes baby steps. All it takes is a meeting here, a public hearing, and you can change your regulations if you think that they're too restrictive. If they're too lenient, you have a whole bunch of projects built and you can't do anything about
Change it.
it. And I don't know how many of you were here when land use regulations went in. It got real busy right before land use regulations went in. Including, I can't remember, Tim, do you remember how much was it at Harrisville? Was that 80 units? That was at the Harrisville Golf Course? That was approved right before land use went in. They were never built because there wasn't a market for that. And Doug Hill Road, all of those,
Oh, yeah.
all of that came in right before the land use regulations. So there is a precedent to say, be careful. And then maybe start and then make some changes as you go. Right now, we have very restrictive regulations. And I just don't want to go from one extreme to another.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. It's always easier to make them less restrictive, but much harder to make them more restrictive, right?
So Doug, practically speaking, how does one go slow?
Well, I think David suggested, I think Aaron, you have some agreement on it. Maybe a size limit to start with. Limiting it, I suggested, so we don't allow it in cluster subdivisions, or John, 2000 and say anything approved after 2005 or whatever the date is.
So we're talking about 1 to 2.5, is that what we're talking
I
about?
think so.
And over 2.5, we don't have a problem with putting whatever you want, right? Or not? You can put it. Or quite.
Slowly versus.
Slowly.
I mean, we just do duplex first.
Let's start.
On that 1 to 2.5 acre, the summary was 2 units, either a duplex or a single family residence plus an ADU, right? Does the duplex, we would limit the duplexes to not allow an ADU in the duplex? Essentially having 4.
You have to do
Right.
that.
Right, you would get two units, basically however you'd like to configure it.
But you can only have 2 units.
Okay, so no ADU in the duplex?
No.
Okay.
And that's why I really want to get rid of ADUs.
So that would get rid of the ADU stuff in our regs.
And John's got to tell us if that's the right way to craft it. That's, I think you want to get rid of that second thing, because I can see someone arguing with the town. Oh, I don't have, I have a duplex, but I can have an ADU attached to my single family,
Oh,
my unit.
yeah, oh, yeah,
That's what
right,
we use.
right. Yeah.
Right, and I think, yeah, with fairly simple language, just to basically say 2 dwelling units on a lot such as that, and leave it as simple as that.
So the simple question, do we have a lot of ADUs in town? Under the current regs? I mean, if people jump for those? There
haven't been that, there are some pre-existing, and I think there are far more pre-existing 2 families and ADUs than that got permitted in the last, 4 years or so since that regulation has been in effect. I would say there's probably been, I don't know, less than 20 that have been added over the last 4 years.
Okay. So are we okay with 4 unit, 2.5 acres?
Well, I think that we're gonna move that to another discussion. I think we're just working on
So we're
duplex.
working on duplex.
Do duplexes first.
Okay.
And maybe make that the only
Yeah.
modification to the regulations for duplexes. Not have any middle housing discussion at this point.
I mean, I'd like to create a situation where developers aren't necessarily gonna come in and build a bunch of duplexes, but where individual people will come in and say, I can afford this land. I'm gonna build a duplex so that I can
Rent it out.
rent it out and afford it, and then maybe move forward to buy a bigger house later or not. Or even if they just keep it and use it for rental income, it's still, 2 units that are available for less than maybe a full mortgage. So people can afford, I'm thinking younger people maybe with or without a couple of kids, so you don't need a whole, where they're struggling to get started, so we create a place for them to be. And that's what we've heard from, at meetings over the years, coming complaining about people's rents going up and not being able to afford to live in town. And I don't, we can't regulate rent prices and housing prices, and we try to create a situation so it's more affordable. So, and that's why we're.
So is that giving John Guskowski some direction in terms of editing?
So are you getting some direction from this discussion, John?
Honestly, well, I'm hearing that people aren't comfortable with change. Because what we've circled around to, if I might be blunt, is let's really not change much, but maybe move the ADU number from 1,000 to 1,200 square feet.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Baby step.
So sad.
So is it, but
I want to say, I would look to something a little bit more expansive than that, but something to start, yep. And part of it is, I don't want to dominate the conversation. I just want to have the discussion. Because I think we're gonna get a discussion when we go to a public hearing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We want to hear from the public. We want to make sure we're doing what people hope that we're doing.
I think my biggest concern is what we're envisioning and what a developer is going to do are two very different things. Cause we can come up with all these great creative solutions, like you can take this 42 by 26 raised ranch that's a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom that you can potentially raise a family in because people did it for years. But is a developer going to build that with this option, and what is going to happen from that end?
And that example on Payne District Road, it's 170 feet away from the edge of the road. If the setback becomes 50 feet, a building like that becomes much more evident in town.
Right.
It's not that it's any different, but it just gives a different sense to what the town looks like.
Right, and that wasn't built by a developer.
No,
Yeah.
but I'm saying if we develop it, it would be costly to go back 175 feet to build a duplex.
And because I live on Bungie and I don't ever want to see lot sizes that small
Yeah.
ever again, but for perspective, if you turn on Laurel Hill Drive, right? So the first 3 houses are exactly an acre and they're all 2 3-bedroom houses, you know what I mean? There's a 0.4, a 0.3, a 0.3, but and it's, you can do it so that it feels okay. Yes, they're tiny yards, but it's a community. It's not overbearing. It's not something I want to see because the lot size scares the crap out of me. But to understand what a developer can do with our regulations is my biggest hiccup, I guess.
Well, I think that's why we value Doug's perspective, because I think he's helping us see what some openings and some, what a developer might look at these regulations that, oh, well, it doesn't say I can't do this.
So we're gonna have to let go of our perspectives and buckle down to what actually we're willing to do without images, say, what is the bedroom count we want on this size, or what is the buildable percentage of a lot that we want built? And give up that idea of what we see being built there. Cause we can't control that. We can't control what they're gonna build there.
To an extent, by the setback. by
Yes,
the
there
size,
we can
by the square
control.
footage, where we can
Yes.
control it, whether there's a buffer
Yes.
required for it. So there are some things we can help mitigate a big structure.
So what size should we tell John to put in his next revision?
Not 1,200.
15.
Setback in
I like
Thompson.
15, but I'd rather have it 3,000 for the 2.
That's
than
what I- yeah.
300.
Yes.
You're open to change, aren't you, Doug?
When I moved to Woodstock, what was it, 942
We just
square
looked up
foot
his old
ranch,
house.
my first house.
At
Were you happy?
942.
Huh?
He raised his kids and he's
Happy.
happy.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, we slept in the house and the kids were in school.
Yeah.
And then we were out on the lake.
Yeah.
So all we did is sleep there and they turned out okay, I think. So, I mean, now, the house that I have now, I
In a way, I don't like it because it's more cleaning to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. More maintenance, more cleaning. So,
So we're looking at it right now. I think that number we kind of toss around is like 3,000 square feet total. Or 1,500 to a unit.
Are you gonna limit it to 1,500 per unit or just 3,000?
Could be 2 and 1, I suppose.
So in other words, if you have a single family residence currently, you can have it as big as you want. But if you want a second unit, then your total square footage of living area for the parcel is 3,000 square feet.
Yes, that's what we just said.
Okay.
Is that?
Is that consensus?
Yeah.
So
That's obviously gonna discourage people with a decent sized house to not do this.
They're not gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, so then it doesn't matter.
If you can afford a 5,000 square foot house, you're not putting
So
you
it's
might
fine.
put one. You might put a cottage in the back for an in-law or a relative.
Well, then you get.
more than likely you want your relative a little further away.
Well, let's start with that, John.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe some increased setbacks if we can.
Just be real careful with setbacks. That's part of the reason Woodstock isn't affordable right now. You have that 75-foot setback for single family homes. It's ridiculous. And the lots determine where the setback is, the landscaping does, the aesthetics do. Just to mandate 75 feet means your driveway's longer, you require underground utilities in a subdivision, so now your underground utilities are more money. Everything's more money, and then you end up with a front yard that nobody really uses. So a lot of times it pushes the house to the back, so they end up with a really small backyard that doesn't give them the area that they really need to have a safe place for the kids to play and things like that. So just be careful with when you start talking setbacks.
Okay, I was just.
But they are important, visual perspective.
Well, I mean, if you think about the townhouses or the multifamily up Doug Hill with those, 4 or 6 units together, it doesn't look that great. The park, I mean, they're set back, they're probably 100 feet back, but you've got the parking lot in front and it,
Yeah.
So, if you set buildings way back, you're going to have parking in the front. There's a trade-off, I think, to Doug's point.
And then buffering, I mean, it doesn't only have to be set back, it could be vegetative buffering.
Which is gonna be harder to do on a duplex site.
Which part, setback or
Well,
any buffering?
the buffer and trying to.
Because we're still trying to.
I'm not trying to solve all the problems right
No,
now.
I know,
I'm just trying to.
But I know for the bigger ones, the 3, 4 and plus, we can put more things in there saying it's actually set back more and you need the trees and everything, 75 foot, whatever. So we have more leeway to deal with that because it's a bigger lot.
Yeah.
But with the duplex, I mean, don't restrict it too much.
So do you have anything, did we give you something to go on, John?
Yeah, that, right. So I will come up with it's basically going to be starting over. I'm going to put these draft regulations that we should put on the screen to the side and make some fairly limited, fairly cosmetic tweaks to the ADU approach and basically calling them duplexes, allowing residences in that category, again, over 1 acre to do 2 units in one building, in 2 buildings with an overall square footage cap. We'll take that approach. And then, maybe to give us all a slight reprieve from this spinning of wheels in the dirt here, is, we're getting closer to having a complete draft of the POCD. And it might be appropriate just to take a little bit of a break from this intensive discussion and focus on the POCD, and then these regulatory changes could be a nice low hanging fruit in terms of implementation.
Okay.
John, would you mind sending us, when you do when you draft these regulations, would you mind sending that to us as soon as you do it? So we can think about it and look at it and.
Yeah, no, I mean, you'll get a draft as soon as one is ready for review.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
And not to throw a wrench in the works, and that's kind of sometimes what I like to do. John, I have no problem you coming back and saying, okay, here's what you start with, but maybe consider this too. Maybe this is a good start with duplexes, but here's some suggestions I might have on the 3 or 4 units too.
Yeah, well, I would refer you to what was already on the screen.
Okay. I'm telling you, maybe you come up with something different a little bit, tweak it a little bit, based on what we've talked about here. Now you've gotten the input from the commission or the people, the representatives. Maybe you could tweak what we've said and see if that makes a difference in how you drafted the 3 and 4. Maybe not, but you wanted more input, I guess you got it.
Like.
I did.
Mark and Tim, do you guys have any input? You've been pretty quiet.
No.
Man of few words.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't
Tim's
feeling
looking
left
for his
out.
mute button.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time unmuting it, but no, it's been good discussion, and about time you think of something, somebody brings it up. So keep up the good work.
So, moving on to, we're through with this at the moment. We have home occupations. Were there any home occupations, Sean? I didn't see any.
There were not.
And the communications, the CEO report,
Citizens comments.
citizens comments. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yep.
Do we have any more citizens comments?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Also first, I'll be fast. My only one is, I will say that when I was moving back to town and looking at the market, what I felt was there were, a limited number, but very small houses, and then a lot of very big houses. And I think a lot of the very big houses do come from people who might have first moved into a small house and they don't want to move again, and so they build additions and additions and additions.
Thank goodness.
And so that is part of why there isn't as much middle market in town. I feel I've lived in an extreme number of houses. Granted, not as many over in Amy's side of town, because I didn't want to live over there. Not you, I mean, my parents. And I'm sorry, Jessica Weaver Boose. Thank you. Last name is Boose, the very last part. So it's just, we can't control what people do, and it's just ongoing. And I mean, I've even learned about how many buildings in town are or were what would from this discussion be called duplexes, like so many in East Woodstock. And but they're scattered throughout town, and they've reverted to single families, and so now will they be able to revert back? Will people do that? All those questions. So just something else to consider.
Matthew, a couple of things that I think the commission might want to think about is the idea of how much even a 1,500 square foot split level costs in Woodstock right now. 1,500 square foot split level, which if you turn it into 2 houses would be 750 square feet per. One on Center Road just sold for $489,000. There's a 2,000 square foot house for sale on, I don't know where it is, on 2.7 acres, 600 grand. A 2,900 square foot house for 800 grand. These are incredibly expensive homes. If you were building them, Doug, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. If you were to build, say, a 2,200 square foot duplex right now, that would cost you more than 600,000 because you have to do more plumbing and sort of double to a lot of things, right? So if the idea that what the commission is trying to get at is creating some type of more, and I understand that affordability is not a thing that the town that the town can make, but more attainable housing. $300,000 for a thousand square feet is not particularly attainable. I understand that that's what the market is asking for, but we might want to be thinking smaller than that. And then again, this is all on you guys. The other thing that I was thinking about was setbacks and Joe brought this up, is there are plenty of ranch houses in the town that are viewable from 25 feet, 50 feet. I would argue that ranch houses in Woodstock are part of the character of our town. And hiding them isn't not necessarily a thing that we might want to do, not necessarily a thing that we want to do. Like Woodstock isn't just, the beautiful historic district of 169, right? It's everything. It's all the kind of quirky little homes and then kind of dilapidated farmhouses and some other weird things that are going on. To John's point about some of the homes that have got 1,000 weird cars in the front of them. That is also part of town. We might not like it, but it is part of town. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Now we can go to the ZEO report. John.
Okay, I'll put it on screen. There's not that much to it. Just a couple of new permits this month, a new single family residence, a couple of accessory things. I'll note, I did get an email today. There's a chicken coop that was applied for on Valley View Road, which is part of Bungie. I was alerted today by the Bungie building and zoning person, you can't have chickens on Bungie. So this is, they applied. I do not have any regulations prohibiting this. So I am fine with permitting it. However, if you live on Bungie, you not only have to live by town zoning rules, you also have to live by association rules. So this dude is about to get bad news from his association. I'll note I did not change the Denuzio. I didn't update that following my discovery that it's not actually a subdivision, but so that'll be a single family residence. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the time in office this month was spent finishing up the plan of conservation and development draft, which I'm happy to say is a complete first draft. All of the components are in place, and Amy, has it been distributed to the committee yet?
Yes, it has.
So the draft has been distributed to the committee. My hope is that we'll make maybe a couple of tweaks at their meeting the first Thursday of May, and as they are a subcommittee of this body, this Planning and Zoning Commission, they will report back and send their draft to you to do what you want with it. So hopefully we're less than a month away from you guys seeing the full draft.
Great.
Awesome.
I don't have any information on the budget report this month.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shut down. There's nothing to it. But I'll put it on screen if you'd like.
Is that regulated activity on a scenic road something new? Well, it looks like it's something new. Joy Road and Quarry Road.
That's just, no, those are following up concerns and complaints. The one on Joy Road, there was some tree clearing that was behind the right of way. So it was not subject to the ordinance. And Quarry Road, we still need to go out there. First Selectman Paquette and I need to go out and do some inspection on Quarry Road, some potential informal parking areas. It's not clear exactly what's going on. So we're taking a site visit out there.
It's not related to previous discussions on Quarry Road.
That is correct.
That it's
other than the fact that it continues to be a scenic road.
Not really.
It's not. Okay.
Okay, and there's the budget report.
So the budget report is on screen. No real change. I think there's, your target budget. Obviously there was the Connecticut Federation, but I think we're still well below the dues and conferences number.
I just want to go back to your report, John, just the second to the last, process of the town's alcohol ordinance,
Oh, yeah.
what's bringing that up?
Some folks that want to add, that are looking at doing a gas station, convenience store, and package store. And in order to do that, we're any changes. I believe all we allow are like restaurant liquor permits and grocery store beer permits, which is what the package store or the convenience store out Woodstock Valley has. But to change that to allow more types of alcohol sales, you would need to actually, it's a ballot measure. It would have to be on November's ballot, and in order to do that, you need something like 600 voters. So I would just, helping this potential developer understand that process. They would have to, obviously find a site. They would have to change the ordinance with the voters, and then submit special permit. So it's a long road for them.
Okay. Thank you.
And how's the work on the citation ordinance coming?
Coming along well. The town attorney reviewed the draft language, added a bunch of stuff, some edits. Chairman Paquette and I were both okay with those edits, so I think he should have a reviewable draft pretty soon, I think.
That's being written by the selectmen, right?
It was proposed by the selectmen. I added some language to it. Some of the language was taken from the proposal from Gene Pillow and the Conservation Commission, I believe. So it's that sort of three-headed draft, and then sent to the town attorney, and they marked it up. So I worked on it, the selectmen worked on it, attorney worked on it.
All right.
Drafted by committee.
Great. Do we have any correspondence?
No additional correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry. There is a letter, I believe, with your stuff there. David, just an initial. It's on town letterhead. It's from Chan. That basically states that the town is in the preliminary process of designing a replacement for another bridge. But it's just a heads up at this point.
Didn't they just, maybe it's much longer ago than I thought, that they redid that bridge? They didn't work on it?
Which bridge?
Stone Bridge?
Yeah, they do.
That was probably longer ago than I thought.
Yes, 80 something.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was 80 something.
Oh,
So it's only 40 years.
That's another meeting. It was a long time ago.
I remember the road race had to go a different way there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Young.
Yes, move to adjourn.
There
Second.
we go.
All right.
Thank you, some guys, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, Tabitha.
Thank you, Tabitha.